In this video, I'm going to cover the RPGWizard UI. So I'm going to give you a basic tour of the main RPGWizard editor. We're going to go and cover some of these sections in more depth later on. This is going to be a brief overview of how the editor is laid out and how it might be different from other editors that you might have used. So the RPGWizard editor is one large window in which you can open many smaller little windows to edit your assets. So what I have here is I have two asset windows, and I can kind of drag them over each other. I can lay them side by side. If you're coming from something maybe more like RPG Maker, you might be more used to a kind of single view where you can only edit one thing at a time, and then maybe you would have something called the database, I think. So this might seem like a very different kind of layout at first, but this is very useful if you want to, say, have two assets side by side, or maybe more, or you want to have multiple things open at once, all laid out in a way that you can look at them all at the same time and edit them. So that's what this large gray area in the middle of the editor is for. It's for the asset windows. On the left, you'll notice that there is this other section here with all these tabs. So the first one that you'll see is the project tab, and this is a view of your project's folder and all the assets in it. So if you have assets inside these folders, you can expand them and you can see these assets. Certain assets you can double click and open them up. Not all assets. You can't do this with things like images and sounds yet. You can also, when you create a new asset, I'm just going to create just something simple here. I save that. You'll see that it appears here inside this project view. So you can open and you can see new ones appear. There's no way to delete them through this at the minute. If you need to delete stuff, you'll need to actually go into your projects folder and delete it. Or if you need to move things into your project, you need, like graphics, you need to move it in yourself. But the moment you add it in, it should be visible here in your projects tab. And every time you open a different project, this tab gets refreshed with the contents of that project. You'll also notice on the topmost tab there is something called the Tileset tab. And this is a view of your current tile sets. You can have multiple tile sets open at the same time. Below that we have a Layers tab. Now this tab is only used on the board editor, and it's used to edit and manipulate layers on the board editor. It's the only time that this tab is currently used. It doesn't do anything outside of the board editor. There's another thing called the Properties tab, which you can use to edit assets properties. Certain properties, such as in the case of this animation, like the sound effect and the frames per second, can be set via the Properties tab. A lot of things on the board editor as well, you edit through this Properties tab. So this is kind of a key part of the editor, and is maybe a little bit different from other tools. Tools like Unity have this kind of layout where they have a way to edit all the properties of an object, I think, in the 3D space. So it's like that. It's a way to manipulate properties on certain objects. So, for example, in this board editor I have what would be an NPC, and I've got them selected, and I can see all the properties here that I can edit on that NPC. Okay, so that covers these tabs here on the left. At the very top of the editor you have your basic kind of file tab, where you can open and create projects, save stuff, exit the editor. You have some other things like your basic undo, redo kind of controls with all the shortcuts that you can use on your keyboard for them. You have your view menu, which I'll go into more detail when we come to the board editor, but it's exclusively used for the board editor at the minute. There's a run menu here, but nothing's enabled on it at the minute. There's another tool here specifically for the board editor, and now there is this panel mode which you can use to change where these tabs appear. So at the minute you can see all the tabs are on the left. Using the east panel, I can move the Tileset and Properties tab to the right and have the Project and Layers tab on the left. So this is really powerful if you have a larger screen and you want to manipulate like a board, and you want to be able to access everything at once. You can also hide the panels completely by just toggling them off. So if you want no panels, you can do that as well. There's also a themes setting here. The default theme is always the dark theme. There is a light theme. I don't think it looks as nice, but you can use it if you want. It will, when you close the editor, it will save that preference that you like the light theme over the dark theme. And lastly, there is a help where there's just an about page that tells you a little bit about the RPGWizard. So, and immediately under that you have a lot of the same functions in this toolbar. So a lot of the functions up here are to do with the board editor, which I'll get into later, but things to take note of would be the run button, which is the button you use to run your game, the stop button, which you need to stop the engine with. So you can close the engine window with the X, but if you want to completely stop the engine, you have to press the stop game button. Then there's also the compile game button, which compiles your game up into kind of a exe. And then there is a help button, but it's currently not enabled yet. That's going to be coming later, kind of an offline help feature. So that kind of covers the RPGWizard editor's basic layout.